for our candidate forum co-hosted by the Tippecanoe GOP and the Republican Women's Club. The COVID-19 emergency has impacted all of us in significant ways. Likewise, candidates and their campaigns have been impacted as well. This is a new and challenging environment, and quite frankly, it's placed strain on everyone. We've had to find new ways to do business, and campaigns haven't been any different. Back on March 17th, we scheduled a caucus to fill Brian Metzger's term for Tippecanoe County Council at large. We scheduled an event on March 17th to hold that caucus, had to cancel that because of the emergency, and even as late as yesterday, the Republican Women's Club had previously scheduled a candidate event and had to cancel that because of the emergency. So again, this is in response to, specific response to that, and that's what brings us here tonight. A little over a week ago, we held our first virtual caucus ever, and it was likely the first caucus held virtually in the state of Indiana. Nearly 100% of our precinct committeemen joined us from their computers, their laptops, their tablets, their phones, from runways at airports, and even one from York, Pennsylvania, who had responded to the COVID-19 emergency. Now we find ourselves 2 weeks away from Indiana's June 2nd primary. We have great candidates from the top of the ticket with Governor Eric Holcomb all the way to our local races. They need your support, and most important, they need your vote. That support doesn't end on June 2nd. There'll be a great deal of work to do in the coming months as we head to the general election. There's going to be a lot of campaigns out there that are going to need help, and I encourage you all to find ways to get plugged into those campaigns. Winning with a team effort is easier and it's fun. Speaking of teams, I want to take a moment to recognize the wonderful team that we have on hand this evening, and many of these folks were also with us at our caucus back on May 7th. Lafayette First Christian Church for hosting us again this evening in their fellowship hall. Our producer and IAD extraordinaire, Steve Klink. Videographers Robin Sturgeon and Ross Klink. Our sound engineer, David Caddy of Smith Sound. Kyle Rice, who put together our social media package. From the Republican Women's Club, our timekeepers, B. Smith and Isabel Hogue. Also want to thank Barb Knackle and Julie Roush for their help in planning for this event. A lot of hours went into this, and I know it won't be flawless tonight because it is technology, but I'm hopeful that you'll get a lot out of it as you hear from each of our candidates. Tonight's forum is going to be divided into two segments. In just a few minutes, we'll start session one, which will involve our county council at-large candidates. There are a total of 6 candidates in that race. And then later tonight at 7 o'clock, you will hear from 3 candidates who are vying for Judge of Superior Court 4. The format is going to be the same for each of these sessions. After introductions, our moderators will ask questions of each candidate. They're going to do that in a predetermined order that was set prior to this broadcast. The order will be rotated with each progressive question. If time allows, we may take additional questions by phone line that we will get to you, but again, with 6 candidates and a boatload of questions, quite frankly, it's unlikely that in this session that we'll be able to do that. Our first moderator this evening is Gina Quattrocchi. Gina and her family are lifelong Tippecanoe County residents. She's a Purdue alum with a degree in liberal arts and spent over 2 decades working as both a reporter and an anchor with our local affiliate, WLFI TV 18. Her career put her in the heart of many important issues in our community, but she always found a way to get plugged into local nonprofits such as the March of Dimes, Jerry Lewis, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and the American Heart Association. It is my pleasure to turn things over now to Gina Quattrocchi.
Very good. Tracy, thank you so much. As Tracy said, I'm Gina Quattrocchi, very happy to be with you here this evening. We're going to get right to it, and we're going to meet our candidates tonight. First, John Basham.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Tracy, for that introduction. I am John Basham. I am Tippecanoe County Council at Large. I'm running again. First of all and foremost, I'd like to thank First Christian Church. the Republican Women's Club, and the GOP. The Tippecanoe County Council holds the purse strings to the county. The commissioners make the law, and then they come to the council on how to spend it and whether we spend it or not. In 2009, when I had taken office, the economy was in bad shape. I think we did a great job. I've been in business myself for 42 years, and by the way, we on the council, we have a $7 million rainy day fund, which will come in handy. Hopefully we don't use it, but it'll come in handy. I'm a numbers guy. You show me the numbers, I can put it together. I deal with big money, big numbers, and I know how to handle money. If you think I'm worthy of that cause, I'll give you my best. John Basham, County Council at Large.
John Basham, thank you. Our next candidate tonight, Dave Williams.
Thank you, Gina. I am Dave Williams. I live at 516 South 8th Street in Lafayette. I've been married to Charmian Williams for nearly 40 years, and we've raised 5 adult sons. I came to Lafayette as a student teacher, was assigned to teach after student teaching, and worked 34 years in the LSC, with 29 of those years as a principal. I took early retirement and worked for 14 years with Purdue Credit Union as their development manager. I spent 8 years on the council, 5 of those in leadership positions. I spent 2 years as vice president and 3 years as president. Thank you for the opportunity.
Dave, thank you very much. Our next candidate to meet this evening, Mr. Barry Richard.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, all the Republican Party, for being able to tune in and being able to be available to support the candidates. I've been married to my wife, Cindy, for 40 years. We have 3 adult children, Clayton, Casey, and Taylor. We've all been lifelong residents of Tippecanoe County. We're very fortunate to have such a tremendous county of people that's all working together. And obviously, it's something I've been very blessed with, is to work in our community. One thing I want to make sure everybody kind of pays attention to and works through the candidates and your decision on who to vote for and who to support. I'm the only candidate up here, non-incumbent, that were signed up when there were 3 incumbents signed up. That shows that I am willing to work at it, to go out there and make sure that we do all we can to make sure our ticket is elected in November. It's very important to get candidates that are electable. Thank you.
Barry Richard, thank you. Our next candidate to meet this evening is Mr. Shane Wiest.
Thank you, Gina. I'm a lifelong resident of Tippecanoe County, a graduate of Central Catholic and Purdue University. I'm married to my wife, Chelsea, and I have 3 kids, Logan, Ellen, Hope. Thank you for joining us tonight during this very difficult time. I continue to pray for all of you and your families during this. I've been very active in our party for many years through the steering committee. I was previously chairman of the Fairfield Township Board, so I've dealt a lot with financial numbers and budgets. I've served on many local nonprofit boards as president, as treasurer, many different positions, so I've dealt a lot with budgets in that sense as well. I'm here because I want to continue to serve the community. As part of this council, I promise to serve you to my best ability, always keeping the best interests of our citizens and especially our future generations in mind. I will serve with dignity, truth, and never fear of asking questions. I appreciate your time this evening, and most of all, I appreciate your support.
Shane Wiest, thank you very much. Our next candidate to meet this evening is Mr. Kevin Underwood.
Thank you, Gina. I'm Kevin Underwood, if we've not had the opportunity to meet. I have the opportunity and honor to serve as a member of our Tippecanoe County Council at Large. I also serve as the president of our council. I became the president when our past president, Brian Mesker, passed away earlier this past year. My wife, Sherry, and I have been married for 30 years. We have 3 adult children, and we farm with my family in the northwest part of Tippecanoe County. I've used the opportunity in my life to be able to serve our community both in agriculture and here in Tippecanoe County. Just to highlight a couple of things that I've done in that time, I served for 9 years as the president of Tippecanoe County, of the Tippecanoe County Farm Bureau Board. I also serve on the Indiana Farm Bureau Board as on the board of directors with the 8 counties in this particular area of the state, and also serve as the chair of the board of elders for the Crestview Community Church here in Lafayette. Thank you.
All right, Kevin Underwood, thank you very much. Our last candidate this evening, Jody Hamilton.
Good evening, I'm Jody Hamilton. I'm excited to be here tonight, and thank you to everybody involved in putting this together. This is extremely exciting to have the opportunity to be able to speak with all of you and answer some questions tonight. I've been born and raised here in Tippecanoe County, along with my husband was born and raised here as well, and we have 2 teenage children, a son and a daughter, and they're heavily involved in what's going on in the community. In the past 24 years, I've spent in economic development, serving the existing companies and helping them grow, as well as many challenges that we've gone through with this community in the last 24 years. I've also worked with several companies in recruiting them to the community as well. And with that, working with the City of Lafayette, West Lafayette, and obviously the many departments within the county. So I'm excited to be here tonight, and I look for your support. Thank you.
Jody Hamilton, thank you. Thank you to our candidates. We'll now move to the question portion of this evening. Our first question will start with Mr. John Basham. The question is, the County Council has the ultimate decision-making power regarding fiscal affairs. This includes setting policy and procedures for the allocation and expenditure of county funds. The strength of the Tippecanoe County Council is in the diverse backgrounds of its members. If elected in November, what special skills or attributes will you bring to the council?
Thank you, Gina. To answer that question, I have a lot of business skills. I had a grocery store here in Lafayette when it wasn't popular, low-income area. I made it go. I have about 1,000 students at Purdue University, a large business. I lived in Tippecanoe County all my life. One of the things I brought to the county, and how long do I have? 2 minutes? Okay. My background was in environmental at Eli Lilly, so John Quattrocchi put me on this task of building a sewer in Romney, Indiana. So it was going on. It took about 13 years. I got on it, and we got it moved in 8 years. And we have 145 homes in Romney, Indiana that are hooked up, not contaminated in our streams. And like I said, I can bring business experience. You show me the numbers, I can make them work. I love this county, and I want to serve. I want to continue to serve. Thank you.
John Basham, thank you. Next, Dave Williams.
One of the things that I bring to the council is the ability to problem solve, to think out of the box, find a way to make it happen. One of the concerns that I have is not in terms of how much money we have to spend, but a concern for income coming in. We have no idea what our property tax collection is going to be. For example, almost all of the money for highways comes from the gas tax. As many of you know, most people have not been driving as much. So I guess the main thing that I bring is some leadership. I directed the council for 3 years during that budgeting process. And we can find a way in this community to make things happen, to make things work. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Williams, thank you. Mr. Barry Richard.
Thank you, Gina. This is an area on the county council that I feel that I'm extremely well qualified for. My background in many areas will indicate that. Being a Tippecanoe County Sheriff, each of the 4 years we were under budget. We were able to come in, and at the time it was close to a third of the county budget, so I was able to manage that, even though our department was well undermanned, and we had a lot of struggles and a lot of things that we had to do. So one of the things, many of the things that I was able to do was non-taxpayers' money to use. The commissary account was used for many areas, like, for example, $170,000 was coming out of commissary for a training simulator that helped our deputies, our corrections officers, our patrol, every aspect, our courthouse security, we're able to do that. $200,000 I used out of the commissary account for the safety of the entire department and the inmates. We were able to buy the body scanner and use that to screen all the incoming inmates and as we needed. $20,000 is something our entire community is benefiting from, and that was our drone. Also, point out $100,000 out of the commissary I gave to our county government to help facilitate raises for our well underpaid deputies that brought their pay closer to in line with the other departments. I know how to manage fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
All right, Barry Richard, thank you. Your answer, Shane Wiest.
Working in the home building field, I have a great knowledge for our needs for community growth and how to encourage that growth. Ways such as community safety and infrastructure, and making sure we're using those dollars wisely towards those causes. We have definitely a need for more low-income affordable housing. And I think as a council, we can look at ways to encourage spending, to encourage easy growth as a home builder, and look at ways that our community can be safe and how we can encourage that infrastructure and make sure we're offering quality opportunities to millennials, and we're getting good retention of our students as they graduate from Purdue. So I think that knowledge I have in that field will be a great benefit to this council as we move forward.
All right, Shane Wiest, thank you very much. Kevin Underwood, your turn.
As a farmer, I just want to continue to bring a sound common sense approach to our county council and to county government. As in the agricultural industry, we don't know what our income is going to be until the combine actually runs through the field and we actually get an idea of what our yield is going to be, and we don't know what the prices are going to be until we actually have an opportunity to sell the crop. And so like we are in the county government, where we're not certain where we're going to be in terms of our tax revenue, we have to make those adjustments and apply those proper judgments according to what we need to do with those expenses on the fly. And I think that's one of those things that I'm capable of doing quite well and have done in the past.
All right, Kevin Underwood, thank you. Jody Hamilton, your answer.
Thank you. So having a career in economic development, I've seen and been involved in so many things when it comes to the community growth. I've also been involved in a lot of things that, the challenges of the community as well. And being on the county council and being fiscally responsible body of the county, it's an important role because it gives us an opportunity to work with the departments within the county government on their budgets as well, especially during this time of uncertainty with the COVID-19. We're going to see, funds not coming in that may have came in before, but the economy is going to come back around. And when we do, and when it does, we've got to take this time to really focus on some of the things that financially of where we need to be saving, so that when that time does come, that we can continue on and make sure the economy stays growing.
All right, Jody Hamilton, thank you so much. Our next question this evening: what do you see as the greatest challenges facing local units of government, and how will you focus your efforts to address those challenges? Let's start with Dave Williams.
I think the biggest issue that we have to deal with is short funds. I think next year we shouldn't be having any problem. We've got $7 million in a rainy day fund that should be used for rainy day. We also have about $3 million in a rainy day fund for health insurance for our employees. I think the biggest issue we have is funding programs that we have and making sure that we make sound judgments. Many of our neighboring counties have had to take roads back to gravel because they have not had any kind of experience in terms of raising money and saving money. I think we are in better shape than most, but the biggest issue will be, as in most organizations, being able to generate funds, to think out of the box. The public safety funds that I helped work on when I was on the county will generate about $4 million this year. This should offset some of the expense out of the general fund. Thank you.
All right, Dave Williams, thank you. Barry Richard, your turn.
Yes, I strongly believe one of the biggest concerns that we have coming up for our community is public safety. I brought before the council and proposed during the time as sheriff in 2017 to activate and go with an income tax or a local income tax that would provide additional funds. Nothing was done on that until obviously I was out of office in the next year. Where this is important and where I think people need to understand is my ability to think and plan ahead, because obviously things come up and we got to be able to deal with them and be able to adapt. In 2015, I also presented the county government with a proposal to gradually and to responsibly grow our sheriff's department so it's not a big hit at one time. I know with the new income tax revenue that's coming up, we have many areas, the courts, the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's department, health department. We've got to be able to handle all, even though at first it sounds like a lot of money that may come in, which obviously income taxes are going to be lower than what we anticipated. We must be able to do things without using taxpayers' money. I was able to start a volunteer program that was called the Community Navigators. I tripled the inmate health services, the mental health services, and I more than doubled their health services. I know how to get things done within budget and to reduce cost. For your best investment, and that's what it is, I'm the person for the job.
Barry Richard, thank you. Shane Wiest.
As Dave mentioned, I mean, it's a difficult time with the virus and figuring out how to deal with that in our income and tax dollars and the decrease we might see. And, you know, thankfully we do have that rainy day fund moving forward, but we're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to look at all departments and all department budgets and make sure we're allocating all of our dollars wisely. And as we move forward, just making sure we're looking at opportunities we can continue to grow even though we're in this environment, and just make sure that we're creative with our dollars and we make Tippecanoe County keep being a better place.
All right, thank you very much, Shane Wiest. Now Kevin Underwood.
Thank you, Gina. With nearly 75% of our overall general fund budget going to personnel expenses in one form or another, I think where we're going to have to concentrate the most in this time of uncertainty is looking at ways to be able to cross-train and make our employee staff more efficient as we move forward in the coming months and years, in order to be able to make sure that we are able to continue to serve the public of Tippecanoe County in an effective and efficient manner.
All right, Kevin Underwood, thank you. Finally, Jody Hamilton.
Thank you. Actually, I think every one of these folks on the panel here have definitely hit it on the head. But two of the things that I really think are really going to be challenging is obviously the less funds that we may be coming in because of the virus. So we're definitely going to have to be more creative. But another thing is the public safety. And with the public safety tax revenues that will be coming in, and which I believe the county itself will be about $4 million, I really think we need to take this opportunity and look at putting some of those funds and seeing what we can do creatively around the mental health of the community, as well as substance abuse issues here. Because with the virus and the COVID-19, you know, some folks have lost their jobs and are staying home or having to educate their kids and things on, and that's a lot of stress to the families. And sometimes when folks do already have mental challenges, issues, it makes it even worse. So I really think we need to look at developing more programs, and even partnering with both cities in our community as well to see what we can do to help with that.
Jody Hamilton, thank you very much. Your question, John Basham.
Thank you, Gina. When I became involved in politics about 11 years ago, I wanted to show the public that I'm not a politician. I never have been a politician. People who know John Basham said he'll say what's on his mind. So I came up with a slogan, and a member of my family questioned it. It was called "Common Sense Counts." What's that mean? I said, common sense counts. Do you have to have a doctor's degree to run this county? No, you don't have to. So I've used that approach. Common sense counts. You show me the numbers, I can make it work. Out of those 11 years, 5 years, I served as a president and vice president. I know what makes things work in this county. I'm over the highway department, I'm over the assessor's office, the treasurer, the surveyor, that's their budget. I work with these department heads. These department heads have a big obligation. They not only have to run their department efficiently, they've got to run and deal with personnel. And I work with those department heads. So when this time comes, if this county really gets in dire straits like it was in 2009, I'm your guy. You better believe it. I can do it. Once again, I said we have $7 million in rainy day. I do not want to touch it. So we can manage things and we can make this work in Tippecanoe County. We have a great place to live. And I have a passion for Tippecanoe County. I was born and raised in this county. Do you think I'm worthy? I would love your vote. Thank you.
John Basham, thank you. Our next question this evening. Tippecanoe County has built strong cash reserves in the general fund. 25% of that fund is from income taxes. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, expected revenue may decrease dramatically. Should the county council use some of the reserves to fund departments in 2021 or decrease expenditures, including reductions in county personnel or a hiring freeze? Let's start with Barry Richard.
Yes. Unfortunately, this is a crisis that nobody saw coming with the COVID-19, the coronavirus, and it's going to play a big part in what we're able to fund and not fund. However, public safety, I go back to that because obviously I've been in law enforcement for 38 years, directly involved with law enforcement, knowing how important it is for us to have a safe environment for our families. So we can't cut back. I mean, the law enforcement area of it already is undermanned. The things that we need are going to be there, and we can't cut back to where it's a crisis and unsafe for our community. Yes, the rainy day fund is there, and yes, if we need to use some of those funds to make our community safe, our families feel safe, our community to progress, we will use those reserve funds. If it's not a crisis now, when do you call it a crisis? Because this is the time that leaders take a hold and use appropriate, responsible fiscal management of the situation. And if that's what we need to keep our county departments at full strength, be able to provide for our citizens, then that's what we'll do. And I will make sure, as your representative on the county council, that we have all the resources available to us to keep our community as great as it is and to make your family safe. So for the future generations, your children, your grandchildren, and generations, Barry Richard is their future leader.
Barry Richard, thank you. Your question, Shane Wiest.
Thank you. This is going to be an extremely important time for our council to be meeting with all departments, looking at all expenditures very closely, asking all department heads to look at expenditures very closely. And, I don't want to see us removing staff because, everybody at that county building seems to be very essential. I want to make sure everybody has the resources they need because this building and these people are extremely important to serving you, the people of our county. And I just think it's important that we look at the needs and make sure all of those needs are being met and looking at all the expenditures and making sure we're spending all those dollars wisely as we move forward.
All right, Shane Wiest, thank you. Your question, Kevin Underwood.
Thank you. I would look again at the potential of gaining efficiency by cross-training, looking at how we're using our personnel in the most efficient manner. I think we're going to need to work very closely with each one of our department heads, our elected officials in each one of those departments, and how we can use our employees to the maximum efficiency that we can in order to be able to maximize that. And then if we get to that point where we see a real issue with needing to bridge that gap, then that's when we possibly look at maybe tapping into some of those rainy day funds in order to be able to bridge that gap. But I think we need to look at all those efficiencies first and really evaluating what are the actual needed expenditures before we would tap into those.
All right, Kevin Underwood, thank you. Jody Hamilton.
Thank you. As we're coming in to start talking and looking at budgets of the department, it's definitely going to be important for us as a council to really look at those with a fine-tooth comb and work with those department heads and seeing how they can be more efficient, as well as are there things that they were planning on doing that maybe could hold off for a little bit. I definitely, eliminating staff is definitely not something that I would encourage, especially with the county does so much already in those departments that they're already, pretty efficient, but need to be more efficient. In regards to the rainy day fund, I think that would be the last resort, but it is something that we're going to have to look at if it comes down to it, if something we need to do.
All right, Jody Hamilton, thank you. Mr. John Basham.
Well, I go back to my statement earlier about common sense counts. You got to sit down, you got to talk it out, you got to get a game plan. It's just like coaching a football game or a basketball game. You got to get together with the leaders, and that's what I do. I get with my department heads who I represent. One thing I always believed in, that your employees are your biggest asset, and I don't believe in getting rid of employees. Now, if you got someone that's not doing the job, then that's another case. That's for human resources. But it's sit down, talk it out, and like I said, we have a $7 million rainy day, and I don't want to get that far down the road. But we can work it out. I don't oversee the department heads. I'm not there every day. We depend on them. If there's somebody that needs to move over here to pick up that slack, then that may happen later on down the road, just to fulfill that job and keep the person employed. But once again, employees are your biggest asset, and I believe in keeping our employees, keeping them happy. We've given them a raise the last several years, and but we've got some challenges ahead, and I'm ready for them. Thank you.
John Basham, thank you. Mr. Dave Williams.
I think we should do a combination of several things. I know we have already issued some cutbacks on spending. I see more of a problem in 2022 than in 2021. I think, 70% of our general fund comes from property tax and income tax. I think both of those will be hurt, but will not feel the benefit or the results of that until a year later. I know public safety monies were originally set in there to offset some of the general fund loss. When you look at the sheriff's department and the prosecutors and the court system, that's roughly 70% of our county budget. So when we make cutbacks in those areas of the general fund, we've got 23 or 24 other departments that feel the brunt more than sheriff's department or the court system, because that's where most of our employees are. Again, I think we need to think out of the box. We can't do things just the way we have been doing them in the past. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave Williams. Our next question this evening. Most of road funding is derived from Indiana's gas tax. Since the COVID-19 emergency, Hoosiers are driving fewer miles and less revenue is being generated. Locally, the Tippecanoe County Highway Department has estimated that by year end, if conditions don't improve, revenue from the tax may fall by 30 to 40%. Should the council delay or eliminate certain road projects or look for additional sources of revenue such as a wheel tax increase? Shane Weiss, we'll start with you.
I definitely think we need to look for additional sources of revenue. Our county infrastructure really is everything to us as far as growth in this community. And if we can't provide quality infrastructure and quality bridges and roads, we're not going to get the growth we need from companies and individuals coming into this community. So I think this is going to be a huge issue and something we really need to look at closely. It is important, without this revenue, that we look at other sources to get this revenue. And unfortunately, if that means some other taxes, that may be what we will have to do. But I feel like our roads and infrastructure are going to be very important for everybody moving forward in this community.
All right, Shane Weiss, thank you. Kevin Underwood, your turn.
I would want to meet with our highway personnel and be able to really prioritize those projects and really figure out what ones really need to be attacked here in the next year or two and what ones could potentially be delayed. Looking at additional funding in the middle of a situation where we are currently is a little bit dicey in terms of people are already hurting in terms of finances. So I would prefer to really look at how we can prioritize those projects in order to be as most efficient as we can be and delay having to look at other funding sources until we absolutely need to.
All right, Kevin Underwood, thank you. Jody Hamilton.
Yeah, absolutely. First thing would be to meet with the highway department and prioritize those projects, because I think we might find that there's some that definitely we need to be moving forward to, and some that can kind of be put on back burner a little bit. But my challenge was putting, decreasing some of the things that we may be doing is the economy. We need to get this economy back as fast as we can, and to do that, we're going to have to continue to recruit additional companies to the community, as well as working with our companies to grow. And before we can do that, we got to make sure we have the infrastructure in place, because attracting companies to this community, that's one of the number one things that they need is good infrastructure and looking for in the community. So definitely, prioritizing those, seeing what we can do on that aspect. When it comes to looking for other revenue sources, maybe at this point there might be some other grants that we might, as a county, may be able to look at, which is something we could look into further. But looking at putting another tax in place would be definitely challenging at this time as well. So.
Okay, Jody Hamilton, thank you so much. Mr. John Basham.
First and foremost would be safety, and that would be, we're not going to cut short on safety. This thing's going to go away. It's going to get better. The economy's going to get better. This virus is going to go away. We're going to survive it. It's tough, but I'm thinking positive about this. That's why I'm thinking positive about the highway. Like I said earlier, I'm over the highway department, the budgets. And we sit and we converse and we talk about it. But I think what we need to do is, like, again, prioritize the projects that are safety issues. You can say, well, I got potholes, that's safety. Well, yeah, it is. But then you got bridges and culverts. So I would say that we'll just hammer it out. Trying to find other funding. I'm not really for a guy to pay more taxes. I pay him enough taxes here in Tippecanoe County. But I'd like to toot my own horn here. I know the ex-sheriff was talking about how he moved things around, that stuff. But I, as a citizen, I come forward and paid several $1,000s for the SWAT team for the night vision. So I have a passion for this county, and I believe in this county. And you want somebody who can do the job, you're looking at him. Thank you kindly for your vote, John Basham.
All right, John Basham, thank you. Dave Williams, please.
Thank you, Gina. First of all, I'd like to say that our county highway department has been managed very, very well. We're in good conditions. We have managed to get a major bridge funded. We have minimal amounts in that. We also have capital projects. I'm not opposed to additions to wheel tax when it's necessary. I think the gas tax probably is a place that we need to start with, because I think that figure is very, very low. Again, I'm not one to throw money at something simply to be able to raise tax, but I think the way our county is set up, it's based on a rapport with department heads and council members, and being able to think out of the box and finding additional ways to fund things is the way we need to go.
All right, Dave Williams, thank you. Mr. Barry Richard.
Yes, definitely not in favor of any additional taxes, so that would not be on the table as far as I'm concerned. A reassessment of what conditions the areas are, what roads are, what the bridges situations, do an assessment of that and really determine the safety of the community. That would be paramount. But then what I would do is I'd come back and work with some of the private contractors that may have bid on some projects that may be in jeopardy. Obviously, these are very uncertain times. These are times that none of us have experienced before. And the owners or contractors that's wanting to have those jobs, there's some profit that they have put into theirs, and that's justified. But what we need to do is, as the county council and being responsible for the funds, we need to work with those private contractors and work out maybe a reduction in what was going to cost a project. We can reduce that considerably with the win-win situation. Get our work done, keep them in business, keep their employees employed. We need to always kind of think, how can we be creative in making and maximizing our returns? So for me, as the leader and being able to represent you, the citizens of Tippecanoe County, we always got to make sure we're doing anything and everything we can to put the public safety first and the conditions of our infrastructure, making sure that we maximize our returns. And I will do that as your council representative.
All right, Barry Richard, thank you. Our next question this evening. In 2019, the Income Tax Council of Tippecanoe County, made up of the county, cities, and incorporated towns, approved a local income tax to be used for public safety. The public safety tax has generated approximately $4 million for the county in its first year. Because of COVID-19, that revenue may drop in the following year or years. How would you prioritize spending those funds? Let's start with Mr. Kevin Underwood.
I would prioritize those funds first and foremost with trying to address the areas that we're most short now, which I think Barry had mentioned earlier, the need for more actual staff on the roads with the Sheriff's Department. And those areas, along with some of our infrastructure needs within the corrections and in the court system, are where we would probably want to prioritize our expenditures first, and then we would look at hopefully having some rainy day fund, so to speak, in that balance that we would be able to weather out that dip in the funding as we move forward in the next couple of years.
All right, Kevin Underwood, thank you. Jody Hamilton.
Yeah, that would definitely be challenging when you're expecting to get a certain amount and have to look at doing something different. But definitely prioritizing, what they have in place, what they're thinking about doing, and see what we could do with less, I guess. But obviously, we don't want to do something with less that's going to jeopardize the public with our public safety, because that's one of the most important things I believe that we have in this community, and it continues to need to be strong. So really just looking at the programs and what they have in place and really prioritizing those.
All right, Jody Hamilton, thank you. Next, Mr. John Basham.
Public safety, I believe that's one of a couple things at the top of the list. I voted for LIT, local income tax, and I believe it out of 24 people, only one person voted against it. But I support that. Now, what would we do if that revenue decides to or will drop off? And, we'll just have to live with it. We'll get by. We didn't have LIT 2 years ago, but we'll get by. We'll do the best we can. We have great police officers on board. We got great institutions here. LPD, the Purdue Police Department, the West Lafayette Police Department, our Sheriff Department. We're blessed. This is a great county, and we'll do what we can because we have great leaders in those positions, and they'll pull together. And if this, once again, if this revenue falls off, they'll make it work. We got great people at the head of the top here, so that's the way I would approach it. We'd just hammer it out.
All right, John Basham, thank you. Mr. Dave Williams.
One of the things we looked at when we started looking at that public safety was we are undermanned in our Sheriff's Department. Unfortunately, there is a lot more crime in our community than there used to be. So we're probably underfunded in the prosecutors and probation and those other departments. I think one of the things that we need to look at is hiring. When you have 70% or 75% of the county budget based on personnel, I think we need to creatively look and only hire when we absolutely have to. I'm not opposed to putting some of that money back in a rainy day fund. What we looked at was trying to get some of that expense out of the general fund. And if we can get that expense out and charge it elsewhere, we're better off for most of our departments.
All right, Dave Williams, thank you. Mr. Barry Richard.
Public safety, you got to look at experience and what's going to allow our community to be in the best position as possible. 38 years in direct law enforcement, I have. You take the entire council, and they don't even come close to that. I would be able to represent the county with what we're needing and the exact day-to-day operations of what it takes. We can't just say we're going to get by. We can't just say we'll work it out when the time comes. That's why in 2015, I presented the council with a 5-year strategic plan to gradually, responsibly grow the manpower in the sheriff's department and make sure we maximized our potential in making sure that the community was safe. We have over 500 square miles in our county, and at times, there were only 3 deputies on duty to cover that entire area. We cannot let that to happen. It's not safe for anybody in our community. That's why the things that I brought to, and it is, I'll say this, for the first time in all these years, some of the council members that were on board at that time, I never heard them admit to, yes, your department's undermanned, understaffed. And it is, and it was, and it is, and it needs to be, attention needs to be given to what's going to make the quality of our life better. Not only for our life, our children, our grandchildren, the future. And we need responsible thinking and leadership. I'm the person for that job.
All right, Barry Richard, thank you. And finally, Mr. Shane Wiest.
First off, I want to say how lucky and fortunate we are to have great law enforcement in this community that protect us every day. It is so important, public safety, up there with infrastructure for me is one of the 2 most important pieces that this council deals with. Because without public safety, we aren't going to attract quality employees, quality companies. So we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that funding is there for all departments involved, for our prosecutor's office, for our judicial system, and for our sheriff's office. And making sure that we have enough officers on the road to keep us safe and keep our community safe so that when companies and individuals are looking to move to Tippecanoe County, that they feel like they can do that safely and that families can come here safely. So yeah, whatever it takes in this area, I think it needs to be done.
All right, Shane Wiest, thank you so much. Our next question, what experience have you had working with many members of a group reviewing budgets and policies? Jody Hamilton.
Sure, thank you. So I've been, obviously this is my first run running for office, and I've had the great pleasure of being voted in to fill the vacant position of Brian Metzger, in which I'm extremely honored to do. You know, I'm going to be thrown right into that since it's budget season for the council, but I've had the opportunity also to serve on many not-for-profit organizations, including the Crisis Center and the YWCA, in putting policies in place as well as working with their budgets. And with Greater Lafayette Commerce, my previous role in economic development, we certainly did our fair share of that as well, with budgets as well as policies.
All right, Jody Hamilton, thank you. John Basham.
What experience I've had working with other people and money
Groups
issues, boards,
reviewing budgets and policies.
budgets. Well, 7 of us got a wild hair one time, so we started a bank here in Lafayette, Indiana, and we owned a bank. So that was quite challenging. So we got our eyes opened and the challenges dealing with the government and things of that nature. So we got a vast experience behind us on that, and working with the board members and working with the constituents in Tippecanoe County who come forth and want to borrow money, we take a look at that. And then also working again with the Romney Sewer District, working with the government, working with rural development, working with the state revolving fund out of Indianapolis. I think we got $4.8 million for the Romney Sewer District, and that was quite a blessing. So I know how to work with people and how to grease the skids.
All right, John Basham, thank you. Dave Williams.
Thanks, Gina. I currently serve on the boards of Camp Tecumseh YMCA, and I chair their $10 million capital campaign. I sit on the Marquee Foundation Board, the National Football Foundation Tiller Chapter, and the Lafayette Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm the past chair of the Chamber of Commerce and co-chaired the Federal Government Committee of the Chamber for 20 years. In addition to that, when I was in the school corporation, we had to go to the State Board of Accounts with all of the spending for schools. So I've had quite a bit of experience. In addition to that, I chaired the budgeting for the council for 3 years.
All right. Dave Williams, thank you. Mr. Barry Richard.
Yes, first of all, being the sheriff, I was responsible for close to $14 million per year, 160 employees. And again, we had a tremendous success staying under budget each year, making sure that, and this is a side note to management skills that I think is imperative, to maximize the personnel's morale and so forth. When there was an opening, and we knew there was an opening, we did not wait. We made sure that we had all of the back legwork done, so where positions that were vacated were filled the next day. When there were promotions to be made, we made sure that in cooperation and partnership with our Merit Commission, we made sure those were done to not interrupt the services to our community, our service, and most importantly, to the men and women of our department. Executive Director of the Lynn Treese Boys and Girls Club. When I started there as the executive director a little over a decade ago, there were really some issues and some concerns about the financial stability. We have been able to secure, with the partnership of our community, grants, funds, contributors, donors. Many individuals have stepped up, and our board of directors have been phenomenal. As a team, we have made sure that we are providing the services to several hundred children per day to give them what they need. And it wouldn't come without having fiscal responsibility and to be able to have funding for the programs to make a bright future for the children that we have in our community. Thank you.
Barry Richard, thank you so much. Mr. Shane Wiest.
Even though I'm the youngest candidate up here, I've had vast knowledge in dealing with budgets in different sectors. I've been general manager of a golf course for 11 years, a very difficult industry where budgets are always tight. I've had to be creative with our dollars. I also served as chairman of the Fairfield Township Board for 4 years, so I've dealt with government budgets. And also I've served on many nonprofit boards as president and treasurer, and so I've dealt with budgets in different sectors. I've dealt with tight budgets at times. I've had to be very creative. I've had to meet with a lot of employees, department heads, et cetera, and working out their budgets. So I have a lot of experience in dealing with budgets, and I'd like to bring that experience and knowledge to this council.
All right. Shane Wiest, thank you very much. Finally, Mr. Kevin Underwood.
Thank you. Obviously, setting a budget for a farming operation with family is sometimes the most difficult group of people to have to work with in order to set a budget, but I've obviously had the opportunity to set a budget here in our Tippecanoe County with our council members and our different department leaders. I've also set budgets and worked with our group in the Tippecanoe County Farm Bureau. Also serving at the state level at the Indiana Farm Bureau, we set the budget for our whole organization, not only for the volunteer organization, but also for our insurance company as well. And then I've been in charge of, or been on the committee that's been in charge of 2 different building projects within our church, and so those are obviously sometimes can be very difficult to work with as well. So I've had plenty of experience working with different folks with different attitudes about how to be able to set a budget.
All right. Kevin Underwood, thank you very much. We'd like to give all of our candidates 1 minute for a closing statement. We'll start with John Basham.
Thank you, Gina. And again, thank you for the opportunity from First Christian, the Republican women, and the GOP. You talk about experience. Well, you got to get in the game. And I got in the game in myself. It's easy to write a check when it's opium, other people's money. But I have a business of my own that I built from scratch, and I have a $5 million budget myself. So when I have to write a check, I'm very critical of myself. And that's what I do with Tippecanoe County. I take that as my own money. I take it personal, and I take ownership of that. So you can rest assured, if I'm your candidate, and you like me, you want to vote for me, I'll do the job. I'll give you my best. John Basham, Tippecanoe County Council at Large.
All right, Dave Williams, your closing statement.
I bring leadership to the council. I've been recognized for leadership by Governor Frank O'Bannon with Sagamore of the Wabash, the DeFau Award from United Way, Volunteer of the Year from Family Services, and a Distinguished Citizens Award from Mayor Tony Rosworski. I thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Barry Richard, your statement.
This is a critical time. We have an amazing community. The citizens here of Tippecanoe County is like none other. When there's a true issue or a concern, we all as a community, we stand up, we step forward, and we help, and we take care of it. I've been very, very blessed, fortunate to work in our public and nonprofit agencies, the Boys and Girls Club, Carry Home for Children, the Area 4 Council on Aging. I actually managed a 162-unit apartment complex that was government subsidized and brought that from a troubled property to a very well-respected, run property that we're serving many families to get over that hurdle. I know what it's like to be able to come back and make something out of someone's lives. And this is what we need to look at in Tippecanoe County. How are we going to maximize our returns on what our investments are? And that's where fiscal responsibility comes in. As your council representatives, I will make sure your voice is heard. Barry Richard, County Council.
Thank you. Shane Wiest.
I'm here to represent the next generation. I think it's very important that our generation gets involved, that millennials become knowledgeable of what's going on in the community, how our tax dollars are being spent, and not only that, but to start learning those skills from those before us and those that serve on the council now, and that knowledge that's needed for moving forward. I'm interested in being on this council to be a learner and to learn more about what's happening in our community, how those dollars are being spent, and find ways that I can use my skills to contribute in those areas. When I was elected to the Fairfield Township Board in 2013, I was honored to be named Indiana Township Board Member of the Year in 2014. And that just shows my desire and dedication to, once I'm elected to something, I'm going to put the work in and I'm going to put the effort in. And I would love your vote and your support in this election.
All right. Kevin Underwood.
I want to continue to bring a sound, common sense business approach to county government. I have a proven track record of being able to work with our county in order to be able to accomplish the goals that we've set forward in the past, and would love the honor to be able to continue that in the future. I look forward to your vote and your support throughout the 2020 election season. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Hamilton.
Thank you. So for the next 7 months, I get the great pleasure of serving on the council, and I really would like to continue that on. I think with my expertise in economic development is going to be crucial at this time, especially with the situation we're in. We're really going to have to come together as a team, all the departments, the council, and even with both cities to really get through the crisis that we've been presented to us. And looking at the budgets and what we need to do with it and being more efficient is going to be essential. So I think having the expertise in facilitating numerous conversations and bringing those teams together already on my economic development side is going to be crucial. Thank you.
All right, Jody, thank you. I hope you've had a chance to better get to know the 6 county council at-large candidates in the GOP. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a short message from 4th District Congressman Jim Baird.
Hello, my Tippecanoe Republican friends, and thanks to Tracy Brown for allowing me to provide this update. I've been extremely pleased with the Hoosiers and our community's ability and our resilience during this pandemic. So I'm looking forward to our recovery and moving forward our country, our community, and our state. I have made some notes because there are several things I want to share with you. And so if you'll allow me to move in that direction, I want to share that I know it's been difficult not to be able to communicate in traditional means and do so as we're doing right now. But it's amazing to me that we have been able to get grassroots activists, our candidates, our community leaders, and we should be very proud of how we've been able to get out the important message of voting and also supporting our Republican candidates. Over the past several weeks, we've passed legislation to support the hurting that has been caused by the COVID-19, and we've done this in several phases. Phase 1 was just $8.3 billion emergency response package, and funds went to the hospitals and first responders. Phase 2 was the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act. This bill expanded testing and made it free to all Americans, regardless of insurance status. And it provided temporary sick leave to workers impacted by COVID-19. Phase 3 was the CARES Act. This bill was an economic relief package for Americans that includes direct financial aid to individuals and families, and grants and loans for small businesses, and strengthening unemployment for workers. Phase 4 was the PPP Increase Act. Congress recently passed the legislation to provide an additional $300 billion to the Paycheck Protection Program. The bill included $75 billion for reimbursement to hospitals and healthcare providers for COVID-19 related expenses. Highlights include $11 billion for states and local governments to develop, purchase, administer, process, analyze COVID-19 tests, scale up laboratory capacity, trace contacts, and support employer testing. And then there was $825 million for community health centers and rural health clinics that we found to be so important to our rural communities. And now we have, and just recently, Nancy Pelosi introduced a massive $3 trillion bill that doesn't address the real needs of Americans. I am concerned this bill is partisan and it's maneuvered to push liberal policies. This bill facilitates illegal immigration, removes safeguards for election security, and is a wish list for many more Democrat policies. I will be voting no on this bill. Now is not the time to play politics with the livelihoods of Americans. This bill distracts from the real needs of small businesses and hardworking Hoosiers. I hope to provide a more positive update soon on what we're doing to advance an agenda that supports you and your families. I'm always striving to represent you and ensure that you have a voice and are well represented in Congress. Thank you for all that you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you soon. And I want to thank Tracy Brown again and the Tippecanoe GOP for this opportunity to be with you. Thank you.
Moving on from County Council candidates at large to Judge for Superior Court 4. It's my pleasure to hand the moderating duties over to my friend and veteran newsman since 1984. He's covered everything. He is such an important part of our community and always will be, Mr. Jeff Smith.
All right, Gina, thank you very much, and I couldn't have done that without you, for sure. We're going to be introducing the candidates for Tippecanoe Superior Court 4 now, and when I call your name, each individual candidate will have a couple minutes to introduce themselves. So, Jonathan Dean.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jonathan Dean. I am currently a Deputy Public Defender here for Tippecanoe County. I'm originally from Montgomery County. I've spent most of my life until going off to college, but I do have local roots, but not Tippecanoe County. I was briefly in the academic world for a while, did a dissertation on Native Americans, but then decided to do something a little different and go into law. I've been a lawyer since 2000. I started out at the Indiana Department of Natural Resources in Indianapolis, where I was in administrative law. In 2001, I moved up here under Jerry Bean, worked as a deputy prosecuting attorney until 2008. And from 2008 to 2010, I taught English in China, came back here as a deputy prosecutor. I've been in Superior Court 4 for about 5 years total of my 14 years, and now I am a deputy public defender. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan Dean. Next candidate, Matt Sandy.
Good evening. My name's Matt Sandy. I've been an attorney in Lafayette, Tippecanoe County for about 32 years. In talking with my family, we're always looking for ways to give back to our community. including running for judge. When I learned Judge Zeman was retiring, I guess a couple years ago, we had long discussions about it and decided it's the perfect way for me to serve and give back to my community. I've never run for any position before. I won't be running for any other position. This is the job I want. It's a job I feel I'm most qualified for. It's a very important court to our community. It is the front line in the opioid, meth, and synthetic drug issues that we've got in Lafayette. It's a perfect fit for my qualifications and for my experience. I'm very excited about the job. If given the opportunity to serve, I will bring all of my passion, all of my energy, all of my experience and public sector experience into this job and try to make everybody proud of our judiciary. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt Sandy. Next candidate, Kimberly Wright.
Thank you, Jeff. First, I want to thank everyone who's responsible for holding and hosting the event tonight. We do appreciate that. Again, my name's Kimberly Wright. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting and finance, and I also have my law degree. I own and operate my own firm and have since 2003, while also helping operate a small family business for 20 years. I've been a federal bankruptcy trustee for over 20 years, which is very similar to a judicial role. I've filled in for the other judges in many of the courts, most often and most recently in Superior Court 4. I've been active with the GOP, volunteering for many campaigns. I've also been the Republican Women's Treasurer, as well as their 2019 Woman of the Year. I also recently graduated from the Richard Lugar Excellence in Public Service series, and I'm a precinct committeeman as well as a state delegate. My broad legal, business, and administrative experience is what fits Superior Court 4, and I'd be honored to be elected its next judge, and I ask you for your vote.
Thank you, Kimberly Wright. Now to our round of questions. The first responder will be Jonathan Dean. And the question is, please share your vision and philosophy regarding your service on the bench of Superior Court 4.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, I'm very concerned about the protection of constitutional rights. So my vision would be to always begin with the Constitution. A couple of amendments, particularly due process in the Fifth Amendment and in the Indiana Constitution as well. So my concern would be protecting the constitutional rights of all residents, all citizens of the county. The Indiana criminal justice system is founded upon principles of reformative justice, and I think that would also be a major aim of mine to instill such results into cases before the court. Reformative being, to reform people, it also would involve and include appropriate punishments where necessary. As far as the criminal court is concerned, I would be very concerned about upholding the constitutional protections of all citizens. As far as the civil jurisdiction of the court, also the due process rights of any person who comes before the court. I think it's very important that pro se people, people without legal representation, are accorded the same dignity and respect. And I would go out of my way to make sure that those people also were able to further their constitutional and legal rights in the court.
Thank you, Jonathan Dean. Matt Sandy?
Thank you. I'm what you consider a small government constitutionalist. Always the Constitution has to be the North Star. We always have to be sensitive about due process rights, equal protection for all litigants in a courtroom. However, the first three priorities for any judge in any court has to be public safety. There's a lot of opportunity for that in this courtroom. Again, this is the courtroom that is dealing with both drug users, drug abusers, victims of drug abuse, and a court has to be able to be sensitive to the needs of all of them, but always looking towards the Constitution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt Sandy. Kimberly Wright?
Thank you, Jeff. I agree with both of my colleagues here that constitutional rights and public safety are very important. This court has traditionally been about half small claims and evictions and about half criminal cases. So when you look at the types of cases that generally come through this court, you're facing the people who are facing hardship. And with hardship comes situations where people need to be held not only accountable for their actions, but also need some vision of their future, where they're going. They need to have some sort of swift yet fair and efficient ruling on their cases so that they can move forward in their lives. This court has traditionally been the court, at least the last several years, that has all of the drug cases, and those will be interspersed between 3 of the courts next year. But this still will be partly a criminal court and then also partly a small claims court. And I think my philosophy is that a judge needs to be a good listener, not like litigators, we're used to being the ones who are talking and the ones who are presenting the case, but the judge needs to be a good listener and to listen to what the parties are saying, listen to what the facts are, and then apply the law fairly to everyone.
Okay, thank you. Our second question goes first to Matt Sandy. As a candidate for judge, what do you consider your greatest strength and your greatest weakness?
Well, I think my greatest strength is my experience, not just the length of my experience, but the type of experience I've had. When I started 32 years ago, one of my regular jobs on Tuesday evenings was Tuesday night court in this very court. At that time, Judge Donay was the judge. The deputy prosecutor was Laura Zeman, who's now the judge. That was basically the creation of the case management structure system that the court operates under today. It was kind of a pioneer system at that time. I'm proud to say that I was part of developing that and have been ever since. I have done what they do in Superior Court 4 pretty much every day for the last 3 decades plus. Not just trial work, I've also done administrative law, appellate law, I've filed appellate briefs, I've argued before the Indiana Supreme Court, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago. About everything a lawyer can do, I've done a lot. I've trained other lawyers through our ICLEF, the Indiana accrediting body for lawyers in Indiana. I've served as Judge Pro Tem in every Tippecanoe County court, specifically the high volume courts to this day. In short, I have trained and prepared my whole life for this job.
Kimberly Wright?
Thank you, Jeff. As I said earlier, I think that the broad base of my experience, both in civil areas of the law as well as I do have criminal law experience and still do deal with a lot of cases that have criminal implications to them with my clients. I think that a broad base of experience, as well as the administrative experience that I've gotten as trustee, will benefit this bench greatly. It's a high-volume court. Cases need to be moved through efficiently, yet treating everyone with dignity. I also am frugal. I've always been frugal, and anytime I can find a place where the court could save money, I'm going to try to do that because it's taxpayer money and it's very important to all of us that pay taxes. But essentially, I think my background in the broader areas of the law will serve both sides of the court, both the criminal and the civil sides as well.
And Jonathan Dean.
Thank you, Jeff. I would say my greatest strength is a lot of trial experience working both as a deputy prosecutor and now as a public defender, so in the courtroom a lot, working with juries and judges on cases. I think another one of my great strengths is I've been I guess you would call it a drug prosecutor for many years, starting out in 2002. Worked in Judge Donay's court. I also worked under Judge Bush in Superior Court 2, Don Daniel in Circuit Court. I was also involved in the problem-solving courts, beginning with the drug court in 2002, so working with a number of judges on that. As a deputy prosecutor, I was involved a lot of times with the Drug Task Force, so I actually saw cases as they were being developed, helped with search warrants and affidavits, things like that. And now, another aspect that I hadn't really appreciated, I was paper attorney for the prosecutor's office from 2014 to 2018, which is basically covering post-conviction filings. So people who believe that they had had some miscarriage of justice in the course of their case. And working on post-conviction, I've seen the 100 ways that cases can go sideways and go horribly wrong. And so that's given me a greater appreciation for things needing to go right, and the judge does play a role in that, and so I think I'm aware of a lot of the things that could go wrong and hopefully can bring that experience to bear.
Okay, thank you. And our next question goes first to Kimberly Wright. In your opinion, what is the greatest single challenge facing Tippecanoe County's criminal justice system today?
Well, this court is, like I said earlier, a criminal and civil court, but in terms of the justice system as a whole, obviously right now the COVID crisis has created a big problem in terms of getting cases into the courts, and many of the judges have come together collaboratively and come up with different ways that we could ease back into the court. I believe most of the courts are opening more broadly next week. One of the courts specifically that I deal with has been using some technology. The Zoom facility, we are starting cases by Zoom, at least for me, next Thursday. I've been involved with both the federal and state courts, and it seems that technology, as it progresses and as the courts and lawyers are more willing to utilize those technological advances, we're able to do things more, be more efficient with the cases, and to get people and their cases and their lives moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan Dean?
Thank you. I might have given a little different response if we'd had this meeting back in March or February before all the impact of COVID. As a public defender, I deal with very marginal people economically, socially, and a lot of people with mental health issues. So I think we're going to see something down the road. I mean, we've flattened the curve as far as infections are concerned, but I think there are going to be social consequences coming that we may not really understand the total weight of that's going to be on us. So I think a lot of people are going to end up being marginalized economically who weren't previously running into court very often. And I think that's going to be a big challenge for the criminal justice system, not to overly criminalize people in the future. Before March, I think I would have said mental health issues are very important, and they're still going to be important. We need more treatment. We need more programs to get people into. Again, as a public defender, most of my clients, I would say, have mental health issues co-occurring with addictions and other issues as well. And that's an ongoing problem. It's a problem for the community. It needs to be addressed. So I think we're looking at, down the road, some economic results from the COVID crisis, and then still dealing with things that were a problem before COVID. So I think it's going to be a lot more challenging than I would have expected when I first filed for candidacy.
Matt Sandy?
Thank you, Jeff. I agree. The immediate short-term difficulty is going to have to do with the pandemic and the aftermath of that. We still don't know the entire effect of what that's going to be. I would say many of the changes I intend with the case management structure, not major changes, but tweaks I've been trying to do for years, some of which I've been successful in getting, some I haven't, ironically are now going to be necessitated by the aftermath of the COVID virus. The much more use of email, certainly Zoom meetings. We are able to do video conferencing on hearings now, hearings by affidavit. When we do the pro forma hearings, instead of having personal appearance of people who could be at work, could be in therapy, have the attorneys by email or otherwise. So I think the logistics of it we can work through, and we've already started in a big way in the last 2 months to do that. Some of the courts have been operating smoothly throughout this. We're also going to see a big effect, I would predict, and it's not a wild prediction, I can assure you, that the Public Defender's Office is going to explode over the next year. I've got some ideas for that. One of them I've talked about before with Judge McVeigh is utilize employment agencies, and if people are going to be requesting public-funded lawyers, then a condition is that they seek employment. But we're going to have to deal with a lot of the issues with respect to the pandemic.
Our next question to Jonathan Dean. Do you believe voluntary professional and personal community service is a necessary commitment for people who hold public office? And what types of community service are you currently involved in or have you been involved in the past?
Thank you. I think that is important to get to know your constituency in some fashion or another. So I would say any professional in the community should probably be involved in certain activities. Right now, I'm a commissioner for the Historic Preservation Commission of West Lafayette, so I work with that body to ensure sort of preservation of historically important buildings. So, thanks. That's one of the activities. I'm also somewhat of a sportsman. I get out. I'm an active shooter. So I have been out at Wildcat and also Linden Conservation Club. So I think that's an activity as well. Some of my other activities aren't necessarily community-based. I'm a member of the Amateur Radio Relay League, which is, you might know as ham radio, member of the Audubon Society. So I've tried to have a few community-based activities as well as some sort of greater personal interest activities as well. But I would agree that that's important. Everyone needs to find some activity, find some balance with their professional life, get out and get involved with the community.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan Dean. Matt Sandy?
Thank you. I don't think just public officials, I think all of us should do what we can and give it back to our communities. As I said, my family is constantly trying to find ways for us to serve our community. I don't know which camera I'm looking at. They're all off me now. But if I could sum up in one word why I'm doing this, why I'm running for judge, it's service. In effect, if successful, will be closing down probably one of the most successful small firms in town. I'm doing it to serve my community. My family, certainly over the last several months, has had lots of opportunities to serve our community. This is a community that I grew up in Tippecanoe County courtrooms watching my dad try cases, and I've lived here and been here my entire life. I love this community, and again, the primary reason I'm doing this is to serve my community.
And Kimberly Wright.
Thanks. I agree with both Jonathan and Matt that community service and involvement in your community is very important. And like Matt said, not just as a public official, but also just as a human being. It keeps us relatable to the people that we're around during any of the casework that we do. And I think as a judicial candidate, I think being in the roles where you can be around others that have similar interests or maybe different interests allows you to possibly be more relatable and able to listen better once you are on the bench. I know that I've committed a lot of my time over the last 5 or 6 years to the Republican Party as well as the Women's Club. My favorite was the Women's Club, but I've also committed a lot of time to as an attorney, I've given some free legal time, as well as I'm sure the other two candidates have as well, to, for example, the Hannah Community Center. I've done lots, as any parent spends a lot of time with activities that would involve their children's schooling and school activities. That takes up a lot of time, but also involves the community. And I've also, probably more recently, and maybe because of the COVID crisis, bringing more of the issues of public need to the forefront. I've been very active in helping people get donations made and different things done for the homeless. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question goes to Matt Sandy. What has been your greatest accomplishment in your personal life and in your professional life?
In my personal life, I'm one of those guys lucky guys that hit the lottery when it came to family. People that know me know I work and I'm with my family. I have wife, I've been married almost 27 years. We have 2 great kids. Our oldest, Mason, is 26. He graduated from Central Catholic, was an honor student, a state finalist athlete, went to the IU Business School, and lives and works in Chicago, has a great life and career plan. Couldn't be prouder. My daughter, Micah, is 15. She just finished her freshman year at CC. She's no grades this year, but she's a great student, a state champion gymnast, and an all-around great kid. I'm most proud of, personally, of my family. Professionally, I've been involved, as you know, Jeff, in a lot of high publicity, high profile cases. I think the ones I'm proudest of, through the 90s, I worked for the city of Lafayette on all the railroad relocation cases, representing the city. I feel like I did a great job, saved a lot of millions of taxpayer dollars, and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, Kimberly Wright?
It's easy to say what I feel that my greatest personal accomplishment is, and that is raising my son. I have a wonderful 11-year-old son. Happy birthday to Hayden today. Sorry I can't be with you right now. So he's my greatest personal accomplishment, or the greatest personal thing in my life. Kind of like Matt said, family is very, very important, and I'm fortunate to have a very good family, a very hardworking, blue-collar family that raised me with very good values. Professionally, as Matt said, you work on a lot of cases over your years, and you're very proud of different accomplishments and different results that you get for different clients to make their lives better. But professionally, in terms of an honor that I received, I would say that would have been when I was appointed as a trustee. I hadn't even been a practicing attorney for a full year when I was approached by Margaret Robb, who is now an appellate court judge, and asked if I would be interested in applying for her spot, which she was leaving as bankruptcy trustee when she went to the court. I was shocked, and for someone, even though I did have to go through the federal process, for someone my age, I think I was 26 years old when I was appointed in '99, with no experience, and to raise that position from the ground up was really a humbling and honorable experience.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan Dean.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. I would join with the other 2 candidates here and say family is my greatest accomplishment. I have a wonderful, bright daughter who is entering junior year at Purdue studying engineering. Just fantastic watching her grow up, watching her interests expand. And I can't take very much credit for that. I'm afraid most of that goes to my wife. But I'm very proud of our daughter and what she's embarking on in terms of her career. So family definitely is the most important personal accomplishment. As far as professional, in 2014, as a deputy prosecutor, I was asked to become the first, what they call paper attorney or paper lawyer, basically handling almost all post-conviction filings for the prosecutor's office. So, as I earlier said, the post-conviction relief, sentence modifications, all sorts of these various filings that take place, and also, as a matter of fact, doing civil forfeitures in Judge Zeman's court of drug monies that were seized. So I had the task of taking all of these responsibilities from all of the trial deputies in the various courts and developing my own routines, getting into court at the proper time, which when you're in 6 or 7 courts, that's a little difficult. But I'm very proud of having gotten that initiated and off the ground, and I think it's been a great asset to the office.
Okay, thank you very much. Kimberly Wright, the question goes to you next. Judges in this community have been actively involved in our problem-solving courts for a number of years. Being involved in these specialized courts takes a lot of energy and a lot of passion. Please share your thoughts on these courts and the future of such programs.
I know that problem solving and specialized courts is a big deal, and a lot of the different counties have been implementing these specialized courts. And I know that we have our Veterans Court, which has, I believe, recently just graduated some of its first candidates, and then the drug court, the drug treatment court, was also a project that was offered in Superior Court many years. I think it was before Judge Zeman's tenure, but there could be tweaks to that program to get it back up and running. I know that these specialized courts are going to deal with obviously a specialized area or clientele, and I think one of the more important maybe to get back up and running because of all of the drug issues, not only with the opioid crisis, but as many of my law enforcement contacts have told me, the drug cases can be cyclical, and it's a new and different, not necessarily new, but a different drug that's problematic as we go. But the drug treatment court would likely be, in my opinion, one of the first that the county would be considering because of those issues being at the forefront so heavily in the last several years.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan Dean?
Thanks, Jeff. As I indicated earlier, I was involved with Judge Donay in 2002 when the very first drug court started in this county. I was the prosecutor's representative on that program. Then I was also a representative on Judge Bush's cocaine methamphetamine program, which is basically an offshoot of the drug court for handling more serious drugs. I was also involved with the forensic diversion program on behalf of the prosecutor's office, as well as the reentry court. And then finally, I helped Judge Person in getting the Veterans Treatment Court off the ground. I'm amused that it seems like every year National Public Radio has a news feature on this new thing called drug court. So they've been around since the 80s. I think the first one's down in Miami, Florida, and that one seems to still be running. The problem with a problem-solving court is you need commitment. You need a buy-in from various agencies and providers, and that has kind of been a weak link in some of the other programs. The only two that are still running are Forensic Diversion and Veterans Treatment Court. I would look at something like a drug court, and I would be glad to try to get one off the ground, but they do require a lot of work. They require a lot of commitment. They require a lot of services. So it's something everybody has to be on board, and so both the prosecutor, public defender, defense bar, law enforcement would all need to be involved in this. So perhaps there is another problem-solving court in our future.
Okay, thank you. Matt Sandy?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I agree also that these are important tools for a court to use, important tools for a community, both for rehabilitation purposes and for public safety. I also had some involvement in our problem-solving drug court. I am aware of the problems that were there. They're not simple problems. They're problems that are going to have to be dealt head-on. Those are problems I'm prepared and committed to deal with. And Mr. Dean's right. We have to have buy-in. There was some problems before, and the people that were motivated to go in the court weren't going to get out of it maybe what they should have, as well as a lot of other problems. There also, but that's something, and it does take a lot of time. That's something I'm committed to do, and a person that has a relationship with the prosecutor's office that can make that happen. Also, Judge McVeigh, I've spoke with her. She's been working on a mental health court. Excellent idea. That will dovetail into a lot of the issues in Superior Court 4. I'm not going to steal any of her thunder, but I would say that I'd be delighted to be able to follow her lead in that court as well. But these are really important. We've just let them die. There's a lot of funding out there available that don't involve Tippecanoe County taxpayer money, and that's something that needs to be developed.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question goes first to Jonathan Dean. Tippecanoe County's current jail census is lower than it's been in years, but a few months ago, jail overcrowding was a significant problem. Please share your ideas as to how our judges in Tippecanoe County can help address jail overcrowding at the same time maintaining a high level of community safety.
Okay, that's actually a great question. I think one of the things would be getting people out of jail who are misdemeanants. I think we've seen that now with the COVID issue, that a lot of people are receiving bench tickets to report to court. They're not necessarily being incarcerated. So that's something I would like to look at, working with the other judges. As far as there is definitely a public safety angle. I think even if you have overcrowding, you can't say that, you know, we should just open the jails. I think we've seen some cities doing something along those lines with COVID that's kind of worrisome. So I think public security has to take precedence, even if there's an issue of overcrowding. But I think with lesser offenses, trying to get more people out on bond, to the extent you can get people out on bond and get them working, get them participating in the community, that's a plus. So I'd like to see some, maybe, you know, some use of getting people out with less serious offenses. But I think otherwise, I think that's something you definitely have to sit down with the county government and the sheriff's department to come up with a good solution to that.
Okay, thank you. Matt Sandy, the question?
Thank you. As I said before, first three things a judge has to consider is public safety. In deciding who should be incarcerated and who shouldn't, there's a number of factors that a court has to consider in making that determination. Not just public safety, but that's a big one. While jail overcrowding at times is an issue, that can't be a factor in deciding whether a person their actions merit being incarcerated or not. That's an issue for the city council. While again, the judge has a lot of tools there, deciding whether to send somebody to jail or not can't be dictated by jail overcrowding. We now have a multitude of tools, the community corrections programs, our court services programs, the problem-solving drug courts, problem-solving courts, if we can get those enacted and continued. And you know, again, the type of people that are in Superior Court 4, there are oftentimes a lot of alternatives to incarceration. But you know, when it comes to public safety, we can't be worrying about jail overcrowding. If somebody is a public safety threat, then they need to be incarcerated.
Kimberly Wright?
I agree with both of my colleagues in terms of looking at having some alteration of some of the lesser offenders being either released, lower bond, and judges do have a bit of discretion as to how those things would go. My big concern is that the community does see the judge as kind of the ultimate protector. Victims want to be protected. You know, defendants, you know, want their rights protected as well. So the public safety versus the defendant's rights are often a really difficult balance to make. If I am elected judge, I plan to work closely with all of the county officials, community corrections, work release, all of those different programs that are currently available for people in lieu of jail time, and also develop, you know, good relationships, good working task forces with a lot of the providers in the community to come up with innovative and new ideas to hopefully, you know, lessen the crowding. But I do agree with Matt that can't be the only thing that dictates what a judge would do.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question goes to Matt Sandy. Good judges are well-versed in law, are unbiased interpreters of the law, display a proper judicial temperament, and fairly dispense justice. What characteristics do you exhibit that would make you a good judge?
Thanks, Jeff. That's really the question, isn't it? I mean, we assume that we all are educated, we know the law, we've got advocates in front of us giving us the law on both sides. If a trial judge makes a mistake, there's an appellate court, not ideal, but an appellate court to fix that mistake. So what really differentiates good judges and great judges is judicial temperament. I think that's probably my strongest point. As I said, when I started, I've been to most every county in the state, federal court, state court, appellate courts, trial courts. I've been in front of 100 courts and hundreds of judges. I doubt there's very few lawyers in the world that have been in front of as many judges as I have. I've been in every possible context. I've been the new kid 3 counties over, sitting in front of an intimidating panel of federal court judges, and nowadays they're my contemporaries who I practice law with, who now become judges. There's judges who I practice out of the same law office with in our county. There's judges that I've been co-counsel on cases with, who I've tried cases against, who I have been judge pro tem while they were attorneys trying their case. I have seen good judges and great judges. Most of the great judges have been in private practice for a long time and have not just been drawing a government check. They've gone out and had to earn it, or they don't make the next check. So I think judicial temperament is the most important thing. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm even-keeled. I don't get too high or too low. I try to help all of the younger lawyers, and I will continue to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Kimberly Wright?
Thanks, Jeff. I think that judicial temperament and being unbiased and being even-keeled is very important, as Matt just said. I also feel that it is very important to have had a background in practice that not only has had you representing plaintiffs, defendants, in the bankruptcy court, debtors, creditors, but also for me as a trustee, I've had to preside over these proceedings and weigh the benefits and detriments of both sides of the cases. I've had to mediate different disputes. I've been on different sides of nearly every dispute you can think of. And so I think it's important to not necessarily be an activist. We're all advocates. All 3 of us are advocates in any day. But you need to be a good listener. You need to be fair. You need to apply the law to the situation at hand. And knowing the law, or at least knowing how to apply the law to the situation, and listening to the facts is really important.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly Wright. And Jonathan Dean?
Thanks, Jeff. I think my answer would be pretty short. One of the skills that I bring to the job, or would bring to the job, is that I'm very studious. Having started out as an academic, coming from an academic family, we've always put great store in learning and studying. So I approach law questions as intellectual challenges, and even seemingly small cases can still be challenging and demand that kind of study and inspection. Training and experience as a trial attorney. So there are some things I don't have to study that I'm prepared to do, to work in, say, jury trial settings with the rules of evidence, trial rules, and things like that. So that kind of background is important. A judge who will crack the books and look at things, look at more complicated questions, and as I indicated with my post-conviction practice, often looking at some pretty obscure questions, though, that are very outcome determinative. I think most of my friends know that I'm a pretty calm individual. I'm very fair-minded. I'll listen to people. As a public defender, I have to listen to my clients, and I have to give them respect. I give respect to my colleagues, and I think that's probably the most important thing for a judge is to make that effort to get along with people. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the question portion of tonight's forum. Now we're going to give each candidate a 1-minute opportunity for some closing remarks, and we'll start with Jonathan Dean.
Thank you, Jeff. I look forward to serving the people of Tippecanoe County. Being a judge is something that I think every attorney considers to be the highest challenge, and the ultimate embodiment of the legal profession, to be in the situation where you have to look at the evidence, you have to look at the facts, you have to consider the arguments, you have to consider the public interest, as we've talked about, public safety. You have to look at all those things and be able to balance. And I find that a very exciting prospect. I have thought about being a judge for a long time, and so this year it was, why not go ahead and give this a try. I'm very eager to serve the people of Tippecanoe County. I'm very eager to protect the people of Tippecanoe County, and to see that the Constitution is upheld, and also to see that public safety is protected as well. So I would like to ask for the opportunity to serve all the voters of Tippecanoe County in this position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Matt Sandy?
Thank you, Jeff. I've been in Tippecanoe County my entire life. I love this county. I'm doing this for one reason, to serve my county. This is something I've discussed with my family for a number of years. With Judge Zeman's retirement, there's a hole left in this court that needs filled. It's an important court, important to our community. It's a court I've been involved in for over 3 decades. I am doing it for the sole purpose to give back to my community that I love, that I've lived in my entire life. If given the opportunity to serve, nobody will work harder than I will, nobody will work out of love for this community more than I will, and nobody will be more concerned about public safety than I will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And Kimberly Wright.
I think service is definitely a common theme here. We're all three ready and prepared to serve our community. And each of us have had many years of practice, and many of those years of practice naturally lead many attorneys to want to be a judge, to be somebody that is the impartial arbiter of all of the cases, and to be the good listener that's on the bench, setting a good example for all of the litigants. I feel that my experience, both in my broad-based legal experience as well as my business experience, that I can run a court, run it efficiently. As I stated before, I've been a bankruptcy trustee for over 20 years, and much of that job requires me to do judicial-like roles. I'm ready to do this job. I'm energetic, and I've got the wherewithal and the energy to be the best judge of Tippecanoe Superior Court 4.
Okay, and that does it for our candidate forum for Superior 4, and that concludes tonight's Tippecanoe County GOP Forum live stream event for the Republican candidates for Tippecanoe County Council and Superior Court 4. I've done a few of these things in my lifetime, but never to such an empty room. And I would like to congratulate the candidates in both parts of tonight's forum for handling it so well. So congratulations to you. Those of you at home, have a good evening.
And thank you, Jeff. That's okay. Thank you, Jeff. Certainly a treat to have you and Gina with us tonight. I think most of us in the room feel like we grew up with you over the last 20 plus years. Notice I said grew up, not grew old. But I want to thank some other folks who have been of great importance to pulling this off tonight, starting with our producer, Mr. Steve Klink. In addition, I'd like to thank the Lafayette First Christian Church for opening up their sanctuary for us on the 7th of May, and then the Fellowship Hall for this event tonight. Our videographers, Robin Sturgeon and Ross Klink. Our sound engineer, David Caddy from Smith Sound. Kyle Rice, who put together our social media package. Also, Congressman Jim Baird for his address earlier, and from his office, Sally Sechrist, who helped make that happen quickly for us. From the Republican Women's Club, B. Smith and Isabel Hogue, our timekeepers this evening. And again, last but not least, our moderators, both Jeff and Gina. It meant an awful lot to have you with us tonight. Thank you again. In closing, what can you do? We have shown you 3 judicial candidates for Superior Court 4 and 6 candidates for County Council at large this evening. You've had an opportunity to hear from them and get to know them in a time that it's difficult for campaigns to get out and campaign the old-fashioned way. You need to vote. And how can you do that? You can vote by mail. Those applications are available online at indianavoters.com. They must be received by our Board of Elections office by 11:59 next Wednesday, the 21st. Absentee ballots should then be received by the Board of Election by noon on Election Day. There are 8 early voting centers in Tippecanoe County. Those will open on May 26th. If you need information about the location of those vote centers, you can look at our Facebook page or contact the Board of Elections office. On Election Day, there will be 14 Election Day vote centers. That information can be found at the same place. Again, www.tippecanoe.in.gov/Board of Elections. Thank you again for being part of our live stream this evening. We will leave this information posted on both our YouTube channel and at Facebook Live. Have a safe and good night. Yeah, we're done.